Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of ForcedToPod. We're going to call this one a ForcedToPod one-on-one. My name is Sax and Nic. Call me Sax. Joining me tonight, I have a man who knows no stranger, nor pepper too spicy. Nick, how are you doing, man?
Good. A little sleepy. You know, I got up early, ate a bunch of bad food today, so it's wearing on me.
Got up early to exercise.
Yeah.
And you got to balance it out. Balancing all things. Got to eat.
Dude, got up at 5:30, did an hour of exercise, had Taco Bell for breakfast, Jimmy John's for lunch, Red Robin for dinner.
Let's go.
But I do want to point out, no snack. I haven't had any snacks today. I'm not eating any late night candies, just drinking water. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you guys might have noticed, we are down a member tonight. Walker's free time this week has been completely swallowed by work stuff and some massive looming deadline we won't get too much into, but we're sending our T's and P's his direction, wishing him well until his return.
Also, a blizzard in Texas.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even remember how much it snowed, but snowing in any capacity in Texas is gnarly for them. So I think he sent us a message and he basically said, they said, like, hey, it snowed in Houston and, like, we don't have any equipment for it. So,
yeah,
basically he's, they're just letting it go. So
we had to explain that to the kids tonight. We were talking about it. They're like, oh, how come, people in Florida are getting snow days or whatever? Like, they literally don't have snow plows and salt trucks. This is not a thing that they're prepared for in any capacity.
Yeah. I have a lot of experience and kind of like, I guess whatever you want to call it, like adjacent knowledge to the whole, snow plowing thing. Cause that's what my dad did for so many years, worked for the county.
Snowplow Steve?
He did. Yeah. He was pushing things around. So we go out, man. I that's one of those things where, like, obviously as a kid, short attention span, get out there, get real bored, do whatever. But the idea nowadays of just sitting in a plow truck and pushing snow around when, like, awesome. The world is quite, dude, that would be so sick.
Just ripping monsters.
Yeah, dude, I'm just like, going out there late at night, like all the, because they're not usually going out there when things are still crazy.
Yeah, super
like,
early.
Yeah, it's like, well, that end, it's like, what's the point of even going out to plow snow, if it's just going to get replaced, whatever. So a lot of times that's what we learned early on is like, hey, you got to let the wind go, die down. You got to let the actual snow settle. Because if not, we're going to waste all this gas. We're going to waste all this money paying these guys overtime to go.
Right.
But for a lot of years, he was in a place where he's like, yeah, anytime they tell me to go, I'm going. You know what I mean? Go in the middle of the night, do whatever. So
just grab a coffee, rip some cigs. You're good to go. Up all night.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like my dad. So, but yeah, tonight's going to be a little special one-on-one episode. Nick and I just getting together. And then next week, we're going to have a guest on the pod. We're going to keep that a secret, come around. So 2 weeks, unfortunately, you guys are going to be without Walker, but I'm sure he'll have all the energy when he does return. We were just talking about,
for better or worse.
Yeah, he will. He'll be back. So we're looking forward to that. But I want to start talking. So had some people, obviously I've been sharing with Nick and Walker, but we've had some people seeing some of our shorter content that's going out on some different platforms. And man, I'll tell you what, it has been so much fun triggering people in the comments on TikTok. And yes, TikTok went away for about 2 seconds between, I think, last episode and this episode. It's already back, whatever. But we had a little segment last week. Nick, you talked about, you posited the question. You said, are treadmill steps fake steps? Are they cheating steps? People did not like that. People were heated in both ways. And so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Going around doing that.
I've done some research this week in my lower half of my body, to include my hips and glutes, can definitively say that treadmill steps are real steps.
Okay.
Because they're sore.
That's fair.
I've been doing like, every day during work, I have 2 separate 1-hour internal meetings. So I get together with my team, talk about issues that we're having or whatever. And during those meetings, I've been trying to do 2.5 miles each one. So I'm doing 5 miles before lunch. And then like my calves and ankles and knees and hips and everything are sore.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Is the walking pad you're using, is it long enough for you to get full strides in? Or you kind of just, okay.
Yeah, no,
that would be my issue.
Well, the issue I run into is if I have it too far back from my desk. Well, first of all, it's got to go. Some of it has to go under my desk, or
Sure.
I can't reach the keyboard and mouse. Which during one of those 2-hour-long meetings, I'm not really keyboard and mousing. It's more like going over or just talking with the team.
Yep.
But one of them we're going over issues and tickets and stuff, and so I got to be a little closer. So the issue is if I have it too far under the desk, then I'm kind of like I can feel the back part of it when with the ball of my foot. There's like a little roller on the back that it rolls under, and if I get too close, I can feel that I'm hitting that.
I gotcha.
And then so I have to make sure it's the right distance out from underneath the desk so I can reach and also I'm not falling off the back. But yeah, I haven't had any issues with my stride. Granted, I'm not 6'4", so
yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I know they make longer ones.
Okay.
It is a little narrow.
Okay.
The shoes that I've been wearing, like my one pair of athletic shoes, because normally I'm wearing like Vans or
Sure.
knockoff Birkenstocks. The running shoes that I wear are wide, and so like I'm right in the sweet spot of not hitting the edge. But if I vary one way or the other, if I'm not paying attention, if I'm doing a crossword on my phone or whatever, I'll skim the edge a little bit. But like,
yeah,
it's not a big deal. I'm only going 2.5 or 3 miles an hour, so it's not like I'm going to fall down.
Sure.
Get shot off the back of it onto the other side of my basement or whatever.
Yeah. Does it have a lot of space on the sides, like for you to stand, like, for you to like kick your feet off there? Or do you have to like, are you basically stepping on it and just ramping the speed up while you're standing on the?
Yeah. It's so like, it's pretty basic. It doesn't even have a handlebar or whatever. It just has a remote.
Okay.
There's an app that you can download that I haven't figured out how to really use the app to like change the speed or whatever, but it has little games or whatever, and it'll tell you how far you've gone.
Gotcha.
When you press start on the remote, it does a little countdown and then starts to go slowly, and it starts at like 0.5 or something like that. And then you press the up button, and then like, so if I hold the up button down, it'll go up quickly, but it slowly picks up speed. It's not just immediately kicking in high gear. But so, yeah, it's fine. It's not very wide. The edges aren't very wide. You can step on them carefully, but really if I want to get off of it, I'll just stop walking and slide off the back of it or step off the side.
We, so working downtown, I work at Humana here in Louisville. So I do AV stuff. So I don't do anything insurance wise. So don't blame me if you're having issues. If your conference room's down, I guess that would be my fault. But other than that, no. It's the first time I've worked at a company that's more of like a larger, I don't know. I don't even know if it's like a Fortune 500 type deal or like where they sit, but like a nationwide, like renowned type situation, like where you could say that and people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of that, like anywhere in America or globally even, probably have some people. And so I say that to say like, it's the first time I'm working in an office building that's like super modern.
Right.
Like, they have all of those like modern.
You're not working in 100-year-old mansion like it.
Yeah,
Marion.
for real. So it's one of those things where, you're walking around and like I don't know, man. Like it seems like whatever the latest leadership, mantra or whatever. It's like, okay, we're going to do open floor plan for this many years. And it's like, okay, well, people don't like that. So we want to have huddle rooms everywhere so they can like sit somewhere on their laptop for a little bit. And then when they're doing all their virtual meetings, but we force them to come back in the office, they need to have a place where they can go by themselves, like that kind of stuff. Right. But there's all these like little, I guess at one time, and it makes sense as like an insurance agency. They're like, hey, we want to have healthy associates here at Humana. So like all over the place, there's like walking desks, like with walking pads and stuff.
Yeah.
But they only go like the ones at Humana only go like 2 miles an hour max. And so I'm like, I don't even feel like I'm getting anything. It's more of a pain for me to lose like all my additional monitors because it's just like it is closer to a normal size treadmill,
basically.
And well, it's closer to a normal size treadmill, but then it comes up and it just has a flat surface, so I got to like bring my laptop away from my desk and stuff.
Right.
I'm just like, why would I even do that? So
yeah, well, I do have a standing desk, so the desk I'm sitting at right now is an L. If you're watching the video, it goes this way. Just a regular desk. Got my computer propped up and my monitor. I have a standing desk right there. And so I just move the rug and just put it under there. It is funny though, because first time I used it, it's not a powered standing desk. It's got a little hand crank, which is fine. Yeah, which has been fine because it's never gone up and down. I put it up and I just stand while I'm working and sit over here if I'm goofing off. And now I have to do it up and down, and I have a bunch of junk on my desk. So I have to be very careful about it so I'm not shaking shit everywhere and falling down.
Yeah. Why do you have to do it up and down now?
Well, when I'm on the treadmill, it's an extra 3 or 4 inches high.
Oh, I got you.
So the level, it's too far down.
That makes sense. Okay. Gotcha.
You'd think that 3 miles an hour is not that fast. But like 2.5 is manageable to like have a conversation with the coworkers and do stuff. But I was cruising at 3 the other day trying to get extra mileage in because I had limited time. I had to take my shirt off. So I was getting too hot. Like, kind of twisting your torso, not really mall walking, but my shirt's just rubbing a little on the front of me. It's starting to get hot. So like my whole front of me was getting warm from friction and just generally being heated up while I was walking. So yeah, I had my shirt draped around my shoulders. Luckily, I didn't have to be on camera or anything.
Dude, that's funny. Yeah, that'd be a nightmare scenario. You're like thinking you're good or whatever for whatever reason. You click on your Zoom meeting and it fires up or whatever.
Yeah,
I do
it's a
every
filter.
morning. Yeah, for real. Every morning I have to do a check-in on a couple of rooms. And I do them remotely, like a couple of conference rooms. And then when I get on there remotely, I can see the touch panel. I can see the schedule and see like if people are in there and like who's going to be in there. And if it's like really important that I can swing in there in person or whatever. But oftentimes I can see and be like, okay, there's no one scheduled in the room. As long as I can connect to it, it's good. Like, I get in there and then if we get a report, I can go. Well, the problem is a lot of times I do those like first thing in the morning, like getting up, using the bathroom, like before hopping the shower or whatever. So like, dude, I look a mess.
Before you leave the house. Yeah.
Yeah. I do it on my phone. I literally have like a page, one of the pages on my iPhone. I have like a shortcut and I click this one button. It fires up like 5 different apps in succession that I need it to. And I know like exactly how to swipe and get through it so fast. Cause I've done it for like nearly a year now. And so, I do it every single workday morning. And then, but what's funny is I figured out like at a certain point how to turn my mic and my camera off by default. Cause what I was doing, I was always like turning it away from me and then like hitting the button. But then I found the little setting that I can toggle. Cause I was like, dude, no one wants to see me
just
with my
in
bed
case
and stuff.
Yeah. Just in case somebody's in there when you connect.
Yeah. Cause it fires up. It fires up and it lets me see the camera, because like it launches. What I'm basically doing is getting to a virtual touch panel for the room and I'm firing it up and then I'm joining that meeting so I can see the room. I can see everything's up, like whatever's going on. So yeah, I do not want to, no one wants to see me with my bed head first thing in the morning doing that. So
Although, can
But
you imagine you're doing your checks, you log in, and you see, like, you catch some people doing some stuff they're not supposed to be?
that would be very scandalous because a lot of them that I'm doing are executive conference
Yeah, right. Like
rooms
the
and stuff like
CEO's
that.
got a secretary.
It'd be bright and
Yeah.
early for some of that stuff. But yeah, that would be quite interesting. And as a contractor at Humana, I'm pretty sure I'm not saying anything. Like, unless I see something illegal that I know for sure,
yeah,
I'm like, that's kind of where I go. And that's something too, man. Like, so I actually was thinking about some things I want to talk about. And I'm sure we've talked about this before, but I figure we've done this is the 15th episode of the podcast. We talk about like our interests and stuff, but we don't, I mean, other than like when we go on trips for like 2 weeks and then we spend an entire episode talking about ourselves. We don't talk about like ourselves that much, like what we do, what we like. So like people who maybe they've just found the podcast, they're finding our short content, things of that sort. They might not even realize like, hey, other than like we know, because we can see Nick's racing simulator right over his shoulder. Like he's probably into racing. Zach's probably plays some video games with Master Chief up there and, you know, music and stuff. But one thing I want to talk about is kind of interesting is I want to talk about like career path. What jobs has Nick held? And then I'll go after that. What jobs have you held? What are the sleeper picks for jobs that you held that you don't think like it just on paper? It's like, okay, I don't think that would be fun. It is actually like turned out as like, oh yeah, it was a pretty good time. Or maybe it's just the people that were around you that made it good.
I think my favorite one was the worst one, but it was great because it was in high school. I worked with all my friends.
Right. So take me back to the beginning, Nick. What does job history for Nick look like?
I've had a lot of jobs.
When was your first job?
I think my first job that the government knew about. You know, my dad, when I was in high school, my dad owned a landscaping business. I would go help him do stuff. You know, I wasn't on payroll, and I don't even know if I got paid, to be honest, but I was out there helping. My mom worked at a restaurant that one of her friends operated. It was called Damon's. I don't know if you're familiar with the Damon's franchise. Yeah.
Yep.
It's no longer there, but
you guys have the big projectors at that Damon's?
Yep. With the trivia and all that stuff. It was the one that was in. I
love Damon's. So
yeah. It was the one that was right off of 465 in Kentucky Ave.
Okay.
I don't know, down on the southwest side of the circle. But my mom was a server. And so occasionally I would go in like on a weekend night and bus tables, which is fine. I didn't do it very many times. I didn't do it that often. I made a little bit of money. You know, the servers would give you a little bit of tips or whatever. Which really thinking about it was kind of a big jump into like getting comfortable talking to people that you've never talked to before. Cause you had to walk up and be like, hey man, you need another drink? Or like, can I take this from you or whatever? And as a high school kid, for me, that was terrifying. So my first like job I got when I was driving, as far as I remember, was working at a fish hatchery. So there's a place in Martinsville, Indiana called Ozark Fisheries. And they are one of like the largest goldfish distributors in the country. If you go, at least in the Midwest, if you go to a Walmart, Petco, I think Petco, like Target, any place that has the wall of fish tanks that's got goldfish and the ones with the big bubbly eyes, and the little tiny rosy reds, all those, they were grown and packaged and shipped from that fishery that I worked at in high school. And it was me and a bunch of my friends from school, and we would work after school and on the weekends. And usually after school was like, man, there's so much that went on in this job. At some point, let me give you a quick rundown. They got all those. You've seen a fishery. They've got 1 million ponds. They're all square ponds in rows. And so they grow the fish in there. And when they're ready to get all the fish out, they take these big nets and they drag them from one side to the other. So it meets in the middle. And then there's a plug. And they pull the plug. There's basically a big PVC pipe that goes down to the bottom of the pond. They pull this pipe out and it drains all the water. And so when the water drains, all the fish get stuck in the most of the fish get stuck in the net. Then you form an assembly line of dudes. And there's up on the road in between the ponds, they park this big truck that has a tank full of water in the back of it. And one dude at the bottom of the line scoops a 5-gallon bucket full of fish and hands it to the next guy. And you hand it up, and it goes up to the truck, and they pour it into the truck, into the tank. You do that until the net's empty. Occasionally you run into like 30-pound snapping turtles. Same process. Dang. Guy grabs it by the tail, hands it to the next dude. It gets to you with its head facing your junk, and you're just sticking it way out so you're not getting snapped up.
That's funny.
So they take that tank into, there's basically a big warehouse where they have all these stone tanks that are full of water, and they'll empty the truck tank out into one of those stone holding things, I guess tanks really. And then from there, they have these grates that span the length or the width of the tank. And there are several different grates, and they're made of like PVC pipes that go in the middle, and they're measured the distance between the pipes, and they get smaller and smaller, so that you start at the back and you push it forward, and all of the smaller fish can swim out, and all the bigger fish get pushed to the front. And so like at a certain size, the fish are a different price or whatever.
I got you.
So you do that several times until you've separated all the fish out. For the day, somebody will take a certain amount of whatever type of fish it was, put it on a sorting table, which is just a table with a hole cut in each corner and a little stream of water. And you would count however many of the fish. For like regular goldfish, it was 100 or 200 or something. For the really small feeder fish, it was 1,000. You count how many that is, weigh it in like a colander in a little, grocery store scale. And then that weight was that was your average weight for however many fish. So if you counted 100 goldfish and it weighed a pound or whatever, it definitely wouldn't be a pound. That's a lot. But just for an example,
sure.
Weighed a pound, then you knew if somebody wanted 300 goldfish, you weigh out 3 pounds, throw it in a box.
Yep.
So we had an assembly line. One guy would take a box, put a plastic bag in it, press a button, a bunch of water would shoot down into it. And then there was some sort of medicine that we would squirt in there to keep them healthy-ish. Sure. Move the box
just
down.
Alive till the store.
The guy would read the one. We always rotated the positions every time, but one person would read the order form, how many fish are needed, of what kind, go to the various tanks that had those fish in it, grab a net of them, weigh them out in the colander, dump the colander in the bucket. The next guy would take the plastic bag, push all the air out, had like an air hose with just pure oxygen, fill it up, twist it, zip tie it, close the box, put an ice pack in it, throw it on the truck. So we did that like after school, every day after school. We're just pushing fish into a refrigerated box truck so they can get shipped out. And we were listening to music, hazing each other, on lunch breaks. We'd go back. There's one part of the warehouse had a room full of the flat cardboard boxes, right, that hadn't been put together yet. We would just throw a bunch of them on the ground and wrestle, just beat each other up, do stupid crap.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was a good time. That was the first place I ever smoked a Marlboro Red from a guy named Glenn. I was 16. I said, Glenn, let me get a cigarette.
Shout out to Glenn.
Cigarette, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was fun, man. When you're a 16-year-old, you barely have your own independence, and just waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning on Saturday so you can go out and throw fish feed into the ponds and do all kinds of dumb stuff.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something there. Is like it's so odd when something like that physical labor, when you have all sorts of other stuff going on and all sorts of other options would sound rough, right? Like it's like, okay, I don't want to go physically do that, right? But like you just said, it's like, okay, I'm 16, 17, whatever. I get to get away from my parents for this while, go hang out with friends, not a whole lot of supervision. So it's kind of like the first thing. And then I do get paid for it, but I don't really have context that it's not that much money that I'm getting paid for the work I'm doing, but it's mine. Right.
Yeah.
And like,
if somebody came up to me and was like, hey, we'll keep your same salary to go do that job again, I'd be like, yes, right now, going.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said, man, about
of course, then I would be the Glenn
stuff.
Giving 16-year-olds cigarettes or whatever.
Yeah. So,
after that, I worked at Steak and Shake in high school for a little bit. And then I worked at one in college when I moved down to Bloomington. And I didn't work there very long. It got way worse. The atmosphere in Bloomington was worse than in Martinsville, Indiana. Sure. It's just a whole different vibe, right? And I was working late. I was going to school. It was, I wasn't driving. I didn't have my car like at the dorm. So you had to be in Bloomington. And most of the time when you're a freshman, you had to park your car like at the football stadium, which was a 35-minute walk from my dorm room. Yeah. So, and you had to pay for a parking pass to do that. So I just rode my bike, which if it rained or was cold or whatever, it sucked. So I ended up, my grandma got me a job at Staples. She knew one of the managers. I went in and interviewed. I actually interviewed with a different manager. The guy that she knew that like sort of helped me get the job left almost immediately after I started, which didn't turn out to be problematic, was just kind of funny. Like, I get this kid a job, now I'm gone. I do remember the guy that I interviewed with turned out to be the assistant manager for a while, and they came back as a GM later in my Staples career. His name is Bert Pafford. If by any chance he ever hears this podcast, Bert, you're the best. I mean, he was one of my favorite managers of all time. He was a retired Navy vet. He told me he was on, I still haven't found the episode. It was either Shop Till You Drop or Supermarket Sweep. I've been looking on YouTube because I keep putting out old episodes, but he was on one of those. He was stationed out on the West Coast and got onto the TV show one time. He gave me a ride to work one day when my car broke, and all he listened to on satellite radio was the Elvis station. He was like, Elvis is my favorite kind of thing. That's awesome. Like, all right, cool. Which he was one of the grumpiest dudes at work I've ever worked with, including in the military. Yeah. But he was dealing with the worst of the worst people in retail, right? Like none of the good customers are coming to talk to your manager. And also, if he was a huge Elvis fan, we were listening to like really shitty pop music, whatever they play on the speakers. But yeah, I remember thinking in the interview, we were talking about football, and he was a Florida Gators fan. And he said something about the goddamn Gators suck this year or something like that. And I'm like, he's swearing in the interview? This is going to be great. Which, again, was a terrible job, but a great atmosphere. I worked with all of my friends from college. We all ended up getting jobs at Staples. Most of the time we would go to work hungover. My buddy Kevin and I would go to Quiznos, because I started just doing regular office supplies and then moved over to the electronics department. So I'm like, I like computers and AV stuff, and let me get into this. So that worked out for me because all of my friends that got jobs there worked in the office supply department, so we could take lunch at the same time because we were in different departments. Sure. And so one of my apartments was a mile away from Staples, so we would sometimes just go home, just go to my apartment and make lunch and have a couple beers or whatever, and then go back to work. Yeah. So yeah, that was good. That's how that was my foray, my intro into IT. So I started selling laptops, learning how to fix, little easy consumer stuff. And then I ended up getting a job for about a year at the help desk, the call center help desk at IU. And at the university, doing password resets and, here's how you work this part of the website for the bursar, or, go to this website if you want to get rid of your freaking conduit virus or whatever. And then I worked at the walk-up help desk for a little bit. I ended up being let go from that job. I was late a bunch of times.
I gotcha.
And then my supervisor was like, "Hey man, if you're late again, you're gonna get fired." I'm like, "Yeah, all right, I got you. I'm gonna lock in." And then like 3 days later, I was like an hour and a half late. I would say I partied all night, overslept my alarm or whatever. Yeah. And then like at lunchtime, he was like, "Yeah, you're fired." I'm like, "All right, yeah, no, I get it." Yeah. So I went back to Staples for like another year or two. Most of that time at Staples, I was in the National Guard. My job in the National Guard was, if anybody's familiar with Cat 5 cables, the internet cable that you plug into your computer to make the internet work, that was my job, was cables. I was literally a cable systems installer and maintainer, which meant that like in practice, when we would go set up an operational area and pretend that we were out fighting a war and not in regular buildings, we're setting up tents and we had portable server stacks and stuff. My job was to take fiber optic cables, connect them from the satellite to the truck that had all the network switches in it, and from that truck to our server stacks. And then from there, run Cat 5 cable from the server stacks to all the computers and phones and all that stuff. That was it. That was all I did. Well, that was all I was tasked to do. I hated it a lot, so I ended up doing all the other things with the server stacks and like trying to learn how to run the servers a little bit, do some VoIP phone work, and then most of the time I was just smoking and joking with my buddies, the ones who I now argue about treadmill steps with.
Yep.
Shout out Alex and Aaron and Chuck and CJ and Kenny. And sometimes Blake. He doesn't show up a lot in the chat, but he's there. And so while I was working in the National Guard, I was working at Staples again after I got fired from IU. I ended up getting on some orders at the Joint Force headquarters in Indy. Luckily, my best friend Mitch was living in Southport, so not super far away. He was a sheriff's deputy in Marion County at the time, I think. So he, wasn't paying for gas, just driving a cop car. He would give me a ride to work sometimes. I had a car, but I also had some legal trouble for a while. I wasn't allowed to drive. Sure. We can get into that on another time. But so I worked there. I was on orders for a year doing desktop, mostly laptop, but computer repair. All the full-time National Guard guys that had laptops and stuff that broke them all the time because some of them are dumb idiots, just meathead infantry guys. Not all of them. A lot of them were very smart people, but some of them were just friggin' morons that break their computers all the time. So they bring them to us and we'd have to re-image them, tear them apart, put new hardware in them and all that stuff. So that furthered my IT career, which put me, I don't know if you guys have been counting, put me so far in IT in retail, IT in the military, and that was technically a civilian job, although I had to wear uniform every day. So I worked for the military as a civilian and as a soldier. That job led to me getting on as a contractor at Fairbanks, which is a alcohol and drug recovery center on the campus of Community North. And so I was a contractor in that position where like Fairbanks was kind of already contracting their IT support from the hospital, from Community. And so same thing. But I was going around to like offices, fixing printers, any the drivers are the worst. They had so many like medical equipment things that had really weird specific JavaScript driver packages and all kinds of nonsense. Re-imaging laptops, fixing phones, doing all that stuff. I took the same approach to that job that I did at Marion, where like I was mostly interested in just hanging out with the people that work there, talking to them. It was a weird kind of relationship because my brother had attended, there's a school at Fairbanks for like youths who are troubled, I guess, doing drugs, doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing. My brother went there for a while. He had been to Fairbanks. So I, talked to the counselors a lot just about life stuff. And then, I didn't take the job very seriously. And so, this was on me, 100% on me, but I would like to, for the record, say that this policy was fucking stupid. I had extra laptops in my office, right?
Yep.
And my office was like, you badge into an area where like the CFO of Fairbanks was and the CEO, right? So not everybody can get in here.
Sure.
You badge into a door where my desk was, and then there was another door for there were two ladies that sat in this room that were kind of the apps team, app dev team,
yep,
sort of. And so I had like extra laptops, and I would put them in my desk drawer or whatever if I was imaging them or messing with them. There was a cabinet with a key that locked right next to me. This was very lazy of me because I could have just put them in the cabinet and locked it. Several times I was told, hey, you can't leave the laptops out. Somebody could come in and steal them, which like is dumb because we would have a record of who badged in, when they badged in. There were cameras everywhere. Like, I get it. You don't want to deal with that hassle, but like, you're not going to not know who stole those computers. Sure. And so they said it to me a couple of times. I forgot one day, left a couple computers out. One of the ladies that worked in the office inside my office didn't like me very much. I was, not her cup of tea, I guess. I didn't have a problem really with her. I thought she could have done things better. She could have been a little less bossy to me since she wasn't my fucking boss, but, whatever. It's fine. I have no hard feelings about it. I hope all the best for her and that she's doing well now. But like, she ratted me out to the lady that I reported to at the main campus. And so the person I was working through tech systems, my like liaison through tech, called me one day and was like, hey, give me a call after you leave. And I'm like, no, man, just call me right now. I'm not doing anything. And he was like, yeah, they're cutting your contract to let you go. I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't fucking call you after I left because now I can get all of my stuff and take it with me. So that happened. A couple months later, after that happened, I applied to 100 jobs in like 2 weeks. And for some reason I got a call back.
Where are we at now? Where are we at?
This is 2016. This is after Reagan was born. 2017. Sorry, I should have been timelining all this, but Staples was 2008 when I moved down to like 2009 or 10, somewhere in that mix was 10 or 11, I think, is when I was at IU. Went back to Staples. I moved out of Bloomington in 2013, 14. That's when I went to the National Guard. I lived with Mitch for a couple years. 2016 is when Krista and I moved in together and Reagan was born. So Reagan was born right before I got let go from Fairbanks.
Okay.
Because we found out we were having her when I was still working at JFHQ at the National Guard. So this is 2016. And then, what's next? Oh, I applied to a zillion jobs in a couple of months. I got a call from a recruiter for Angie's List. So to add to the list of retail IT, civilian and soldier, military IT, and higher education, we now have healthcare. There's not many more facets of technology that you could, general technology you could be thrust into. Well, I don't really, retail for Staples, but like then I got a call from a recruiter at Angie's List. Talked to them a couple times, did an interview with the manager of the team, Jason, rest in peace. He was a great dude. And then they wanted me to do an interview with the team like we did at Marion.
Sure.
I met with those guys, kind of hit it off with them a little bit. And so they're like, yeah, we we're going to offer you the position. It was not as much money as I was making, but it was better than zero. Right.
Sure.
And I got to go like to the Angie's List campus. That was when it was on Washington Street, on the east side of 65, and they had a whole bunch of different buildings, and they were all these cool, hip, open concept, like graffiti kind of, I don't know. It's hard to explain. They're
Sure.
all really old, like businesses that Bill, one of the founders, had kind of collected and transformed into his various buildings for various teams.
Gotcha.
So I worked there. We eventually moved to a building downtown. So this is 2017 to 2018, I think. I was there. I was only there for 10 months. Because Alex Thomas, who we both know, was working at Marion as a network admin, and texted me one day, and he was like, "Hey, Marion's IT team has an opening. I can send your resume to Terry if you want." I'm like, "Hell yeah, dude, let's do that." And so we're adding corporate to the list of IT because it was a very corporate environment at Angie's List. I had a good time. The people I worked with are great. I still talk to a couple of them. I actually messaged my buddy Alex, different Alex today. We share music recommendations and stuff like that. And so then I how it went. I had the interview with the team at Marion. Yep. I interviewed with you guys.
Was I in your interview?
I don't know if you were. I know Cameron and Sarah were. Fletcher.
I feel like I might have been out for your interview because the people that I was in the interview for, they never worked out well. Like whatever. And it didn't matter if I had suggested them to Terry or not. And then it seemed like the people who got hired that I wasn't there for, it was fine. So like, I don't remember being in there for Cameron's. I don't think I was in there for Cameron's interview, and I don't think I was in there for your interview. But then I was in there for others. And
I think definitely Don. Don was in there because I remember being like, this guy seems kind of old to be working on the help desk. I know for sure Cameron was in there because he asked me if I thought Die Hard was a Christmas movie. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Sarah and Fletcher were there. I don't remember if Sean was there.
I don't think I was there.
I don't think so. But yeah, obviously that went well enough. I think having worked in all of the different areas of IT was really helpful. And that's like building on that has helped me get all of the jobs. So, I did Marion for 2 years. We went through the god awful Windows 10 migration. I finished my degree, dude. 2 different, med school deans, COVID, frick. Yeah.
Yeah. We replaced every desktop on campus because no one had laptops. Essentially, no one had laptops. And then once as soon as we finished
December
the whole
2019
migration. Yep.
Yeah.
As soon as we got every single desktop on campus updated, they're like, hey, we're getting as many laptops from Dell as humanly possible, and we're getting them out to people as fast as humanly possible. And so,
yeah. And then, we went remote for a month or something. And then they're like, we got to come back because we got students coming back. So I worked at Marion. I'm sure we'll continue to talk about our glory days at Marion throughout the podcast. But I actually took the company I work for now is LexisNexis. My dad works for LexisNexis. Not the same team, not the same vertical that I work on now, but we were working in the same vertical at one point. We were totally separated by teams and responsibilities. There was no overlap, just to make that clear. But the team that I got hired into, the guy that I reported directly to, I've known since 5th grade, my buddy Neil. He wasn't a part of my interview. His boss and the lead developer on the team at the time were. And I actually took that interview call in the conference room at Evans Center.
Nice.
So I talked to Dan. I talked to Josh and basically just said, hey, look, this is all of the stuff I've done. I outlined everything we've talked about so far, minus the fishery, all the IT related stuff.
These are all the environments that guy's name was Glenn. They're writing down notes about who gave you your first cigarette.
I said, these are all the environments I've worked in. These are all the systems I've worked with. This is all of the crazy, stupid shit that I've had to deal with. on the fly. This is good, the bad, all that. I was actually honestly grossly, not grossly, but pretty overqualified for the job that I got.
Sure.
Which was fine. I not that I wanted to leave Marion, but I had this conversation with Ray before I left, and Terry understood that there was no upward mobility from that help desk. Like, he said, hey, if it's about money, we'll pay you money. And I'm like, I understand. I get that. I appreciate it. But like, you and I both know there's only 2 spots I could progress into in this current career path. And that's your job and Terry's job. Terry's not retiring for like another year or 2. And, you know, I don't think you're going to give me the CIO position. So, you know, it's not about that. It's about what I need to do for my career, which ultimately, you know, whatever. Careers, whatever. You can switch careers totally and still be fine, successful if you have aptitude. We talk about that another time too, but yeah, so I got that job. I worked for CopLogic for a year. Basically, the team I worked on worked for with the local police agencies in Maine, Vermont, and Rhode Island. We managed crash reporting software. So somebody got in a car crash, that those reports were done up by the cops and loaded into a LexisNexis database and then sold back to the customers by the insurance company for like $12 a report or whatever. So we helped maintain and upgrade and innovate those systems. The lead dev that I worked with, Jeremy, I still see him when I go to the office. He goes in there every day. He's a great dude. Very, very smart. We like to BS about different random nerdy stuff. So, you know, I would do some QA and make sure that reports were working. And basically I would just answer phone calls when cops would call and say, hey, this isn't working, or I need to upgrade this or whatever. So I'd help them out. One of the girls that worked in CopLogic, who is also now in a different vertical for LexisNexis, but still works for the company, she had this habit of sending us all job postings, because if you referred somebody, you get a referral bonus. I actually referred Zach Bruno to a different job on CopLogic and got a bonus when he started. Then he referred Cameron Lee. Cameron Lee now works for CopLogic. She sent this link, and it was the position I'm in now, technical account manager for Bridger, basically financial software. And I applied, talked to the recruiter internally, and they're like, yeah, we'll set you up on the interview with the team. I interviewed with my current boss, his boss, like our overall team manager, and then one other guy who has since, he was my direct report, and now he's on the product team instead of like the support team. Same thing, same process. Hey, here's all the shit I've done. In what capacity, here's all of the things that I've learned and how I've built this process of learning. Also, 2 of those guys, my current boss and our team manager, overall team manager, Yakimba and Mike. Yakimba was in the Army. Mike was in the Air Force. So that military background really kind of carries over. Several of the guys on my team are prior service. So, you know, I can relate with them. Although this time I didn't have an interview with the team. It was just those guys. And they're like, hey, we're going to bring them in. So I did think it was funny. They told me, this job is difficult. It's difficult to learn the product, and you probably won't feel comfortable for a year. And we won't even give you your own clients. Like, you'll just be kind of hanging out and watching other people and assisting for like the first 6 months. And I remember thinking, that's stupid. It can't be that hard. Of all the things that I've learned to do and how quickly, it can't be that hard. And here I am 2.5 years later, like, I only 75% know what's going on. And we keep changing the product and just all this stuff. Funny. So they were absolutely correct. Good call by the haters, but yeah. So
honestly, that's super impressive, because I know that you had to learn how to use Linnell at Marion, and we know how complicated that was. So, dude,
it was way easier. Well, we're in the realm of like compliance, and
Sure.
and running customers' names through software to find out whether or not they're a terrorist or somebody that a financial institution can reasonably do business with. Now that I've said that, I am in no capacity giving any official compliance advice. I'm not allowed to legally. I have to tell you that I am not giving you official compliance advice. I am recommending what I think the best settings are. It is up to you and your business to test these settings and analyze the risk. Okay. So if anybody comes to me with like, hey, I have a compliance question, too fucking bad. I'm not a compliance manager. I'm a technical account manager. I will help you set up your Bridger instance. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah, now we're here. Now we're here. So
made it.
It's been it's been a little while, but
you touched on it a little bit. So one last question I have about it is like compensation wise, does it, obviously we don't have to get into specifics, but you're talking like, is it steadily creeping up for you? Like where were your biggest jumps that hit with that? Because I do find that interesting. Like some people, it's like real stable. You know what I mean?
Angie's List, I was making 36, I think, which really was, we were getting shafted. Because when I first started, I'm like, okay, I'm just doing, I forgot to mention this. I got hired into Angie's List in the middle of them merging with Home Advisor, which is preposterous because most of the time mergers like that, people are just getting let go left and right.
Sure.
So it went from initially covering one user base in Indianapolis to being responsible for a user base in Indy and Colorado because they had a headquarters in Golden. Granted, there were two of us on the phone call part of the help desk, and we had a handful of desktop guys that would go out and fix problems at desk. But I was doing password resets. I can't get into my email, that kind of stuff. Remote in every once in a while if I need to. There were two guys that were doing that for Home Advisor in Colorado. The problem was when we finally merged, we got our new office building and all this stuff. I was getting phone calls from Colorado in the morning. Before those guys were logged in, you got sales guys who are tryhards at 6 a.m. in Colorado times 8 when I'm starting. So we're getting this overflow, and they're getting almost no overflow on the back end of the day because nobody's staying till 7 p.m. working their calls or whatever. On top of that, we had two guys that were solely responsible for doing IAP. This is identity and access provisioning. And they were creating user accounts. They were provisioning access to various things like Jira and Confluence and all the internal things. Those guys got retasked to do something else. Me and Alex got tasked to do the account provisioning on top of all the other stuff with zero compensation increase. So that 36 quickly turned into 18 or whatever. Felt like we were getting really shafted. So when I told I had my manager, Jason, and then there was another guy between him and the director, Ben. When I told Ben I was leaving, he was like, oh, that's a bummer. I don't think he liked me either. So I interviewed internally for one of the desktop jobs and did not get it, but I thought we were cool. He's this cool dude from Colorado. We make jokes. We went out after work a couple of times, got drinks, whatever, and make jokes with each other. So we're getting ready to go in the interview. Ben's been in the office for a while. He knows my sense of humor. At least I thought. He's wearing this cool watch, and it's rose gold color, which I thought was actually cool. But I gave him a little, I was like, hey man, that's a sweet watch. He was like, thanks. I go, did you get in the men's department? And he was like, what? And it didn't land, obviously. And then apparently that came up later. Like when I talked to my manager, Jason, about why I didn't get the job or whatever, he was like, yeah, Ben didn't appreciate you made that comment. I was like, I was fucking joking, dude. Anyway, he asked me, he was like, if you don't mind me asking, how much more are they paying you? And I was like, it's 30% increase. So I went from 36 or whatever to 50, I think is 50 or 51 when I started at Marion. Yeah, obviously, you know how the raises went at Marion. It didn't go too crazy high. But it was another 20%. from Marion to Lexus, and then it's just been it's gone up a few percent a year,
Sure.
fluctuating or whatever. Yeah. So, but like the compensation package that I'm working with now is I get paid more than I did at Marion, which is a plus. I get paid more in my current job than I did at CopLogic, which is great. But like we have crazy benefits.
Sure.
My health insurance, right now it's just me. The girls are still carrying on Kristen's insurance even after we're married, mostly because she had this weird payment plan for Riley's braces where like the insurance company will pay half. They'll pay $1,500 if Kristen pays her $1,500 first. So once she's done making payments, they'll make the rest of the payments kind of thing.
Huh.
I don't know. It's weird. So she can't not have that insurance until the braces are paid off, or we had to pay all of it.
It's probably just to make sure that they have full follow through the procedure of it all.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But
if
she
makes sense.
Gets off the insurance, then we got to pay all of that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So, it's very inexpensive. Really. I have a decent HSA set up. My 401k is banging. We have stock employee purchase options. There are several health things that we can do throughout the year that will add money. It used to be, now this changed last year and it got me a little pissed off. You used to be able, you could accumulate up to $750 a year for doing these programs, right? It's like updating you go to the doctor and get all your blood drawn and put your cholesterol and all that shit in there.
Yeah.
And then like attend virtual seminars about financial, your financial health basically, or your mental health, or, doing all this stuff. So now if you are a poor person and you have one of the bronze or silver medical plans, the money that you accumulate from these share care activities goes to your HSA, which is fine. Sure. It's still pre-tax money that I can take out later when I retire or whatever. But it used to be able to redeem it for $100 Amazon gift card or whatever. So last year I was jazzed. I'm like, oh, we're about to start a new year. I'm about to get $600, $750 in Amazon gift cards. I'm going to buy a big old Lego set. And then I do all my health benefits and I log in January of last year and they're like, yeah, you can only redeem it for HSA. And I'm like, motherfucker. God damn. I was so mad.
Does it have to vest at all or does it just hit there?
No, once you complete the program, like you just click on a thing and say, I completed it. And a lot of them are just like self-certify. Like, did you really do it? Yeah. But I mean, it's structured so that you can't just do it all up front. You got to get through to first or second quarter or whatever. But like, man, I was upset.
Yeah,
I was so upset that this year when I elected benefits, I almost picked a gold plan. But the amount that I would pay in premiums eclipsed the amount that if I would have just outright bought a $500 Lego set. So it really wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
but
it's the principle of it.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so I have great PTO and it's even better on my team. Essentially, I can just be like, hey, I'm taking this day off. And as long as I tell my boss that I have my meetings covered and I don't have any tickets, they don't even check. If somebody were to say, hey, well, I was supposed to meet with Nick and this didn't happen, what's going on? They would come to me and be like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you not doing what you're supposed to? But yeah, they're just like, yeah, if you need your time off, take your time off or whatever.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's very minimal micromanaging, which is great. Yeah, it's good. I still have a spot in the office. My desk number is 69.
Nice.
I can go in whenever I want. I usually go in every third Wednesday when my old team does their sprint review because Neil will take us out to lunch. Have a little LexisNexis lunch get together. There's usually like 6 or 7 people in there. We'll all hang out.
Yeah,
not get a lot of work done, but go get some Mexican food. So yeah, it's good. It's and I get to work from home the rest of the time.
Yeah.
I get my kids on and off the bus if I need to run out. Like this morning, I ran to the store and got some groceries or whatever. Picked up Taco Bell for breakfast. Kristen and I can house cleaned up, start dinner, do dishes, whatever. She does laundry during the day. So yeah, it's
that's
pretty good.
That's nice. You kind of hit you hit a stride on like the quality over quantity of money. So sometimes, like, I mean, obviously there's definitely a threshold where you're going to hit where you're like, okay, you're going to pay me how much more to come in? It's like, all right, we're going to talk about this. Like, I think I saw someone post on Reddit and then it got posted elsewhere. I don't even remember where I saw it. It was like someone asking is like, would you take 135 to stay at home or 175 to go into the office 5 days a week? And I'm like, well, I would love either of those salaries, but
right.
But let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So then they asked some questions and follow ups and stuff of that sort, and they were breaking down how much per mile essentially you're getting paid, do whatever and stuff. But yeah, there's definitely a comparison there. But
I absolutely miss Marion, like not the job part. The chilling, the BSing in Marion Hall, talking to all the professors, going to the med school, seeing dead bodies, whatever. Like all of that part is the good part that I miss, the camaraderie that I had with my fellow faculty and staff. But I don't know. We still get it. I have a meeting every day from 9 to 10 with some dudes on my team, and most of the time it's us talking shit about, sharing recipes. Or today we were talking about the good old days when cell phones were not a thing, and then nights and weekends and rotary phones and just, all that stuff our kids don't understand.
Oh yeah.
Occasionally somebody will be like, hey, can you help me with this problem? And we'll fix it. And we'll go back to talking about our favorite Japanese food or whatever.
Yeah, like how dare you break up our conversation about the good old days with your work
on
related.
Teams, you can click the little thing, it like raises your hand. We'll be in the middle of a tangent and somebody will raise their hand and be like, ugh, what do you want to talk about work?
That's funny. I have a special place in my heart for Marion as well. I think obviously that's where you and I met, but I don't know, man. It was I was there 4 years. So a little longer than you were, I think, on the front and the back end, both sides. So it was one of those things where I like to say that I didn't go to school at Marion, but like I graduated, right? I was there 4 years all the way through hanging out, and, we were there in Indy for 4 years for Heather's dental school, right? So we were feeling the stresses that were associated with being in school. And then, what's interesting. So I'm gonna go through my stuff pretty quick. So I started when I was 16.
Sorry, mine was very long-winded.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Like I said, this episode, I kind of want to I don't know, there just in the essence of like the fact that we're doing this is a side thing that we do, and we all have busy lives on set. Like there's going to come times, like we've been lucky that it took us 15 episodes where one of us couldn't make it, right? Like to do whatever. I know we took breaks sometimes and stuff. There's going to be times. So I think it's interesting to talk about and just hear and be like, hey, like this is the career talk episode, because that's the stuff that like I'm super interested in it. I think it's really cool to talk about. And it's one of those things like it's adjacent to like the faux pas, like things that most people don't want to talk about, but you and I aren't really like when it comes to money and compensation and getting fired or do whatever. Like, I don't know. You and I aren't really that way. Like we're pretty open about that kind of stuff. And
that kind of actually caused a problem at Marion, because I was like, I don't care if you know how much I make. And then other people were like, you're making what? I've been working here way longer and I'm like, well, you should talk to your boss about that.
Yeah, that's
and then I left, and then you left, and then several other people left.
Yeah, so honestly, dominoes did start to fall with that, but that's on them. Like that's on management. They start playing risky games, man. They start playing risky games when you start paying people that wildly different. You know what I mean? And like there's a level within where you can say like, hey, it's a lack of experience or something of this sort. That's why the variation was. So I think I was actually on a bit of a higher end. I think I came in around 55, but I was always on call. Like, you guys weren't. I was always on call for AV stuff, and that was very explicitly told to me is like, hey, you're coming in, you are the AV guy. There is stuff all the time. And that was one of my biggest stresses being at Marion.
Dude.
Yeah.
There were so many events.
And it's one of those things where like none of them individually were difficult, right? It was just it was keeping everything straight. So when I came in there, you know, the guy who was handling it, won't call him out by name necessarily, but the guy who was handling it, he just was not doing he was not equipped with the skill set that was required to keep all of these, you know, things straightened out, and having the context for like, hey, I heard a rumor that this group of students is going to be putting on an event, like, you know, down the,
Okay.
I heard a rumor that like the student government is holding like a town hall, whatever, in this room, but like I got no tickets for it. And then I reach out to them like, oh yeah, this is huge. There's like 300 kids. We're going to pack into this room. And we didn't even realize we needed to request a microphone and like we have a presentation and all this stuff. And I'm like, what were you going to do? I was like, well, what we were going to do is we were going to call you while you're sitting at home on your, you know, your night off, doing whatever. So that kind of thing. So I grew up a lot at Marion when it came to like organization and, you know, calendars, things of that sort. Cause I really didn't have a job that I had to do that before. So when I was 16, I started working, well, first job I ever remember having or getting paid to do was I worked I worked at the fair over in Grant County. No, I actually worked in the elephant ear trailers,
nice.
Like stuff like that, making elephant ears and funnel cakes and stuff like that. I remember working all day, dude. Like probably 8 a.m. before anyone's getting there and literally leaving like 10, 11 o'clock at night, getting paid $30. I was given $30. And I think I was like 13, something like that. And at that point the night I remember explicitly, I was in like a tent. It was like a white, you know, whatever tent in there. And then we were slinging,
sweating
those things. Oh, it was ridiculous, but it was very fun. It was a really good time.
I mean, all you could eat funnel cakes, baby.
I mean, get after it. So, but then my first official job where I had to go in, interview after I got my license was at McDonald's. So worked in the back, worked the grill, McDonald's. Honestly, I've talked about this a lot recently. Getting the Blackstone, it's pretty nostalgic for me because that's essentially what they're doing at McDonald's. So
yeah, when I worked at Steak and Shake, I was cooking. So I'm very familiar with the flat grill, and also dropping a basket of chicken fingers with maybe one extra for your boy.
Yeah.
Oops, I made 5 instead of 4. That's mine.
The amount of times where like you go to drop some fries or something, and then you're getting the little oil pops and stuff, and you're just getting, you know, it's like, oh, you just have to get used to it, right? You just got them all over your arm and stuff. And then we have the proprietor. I think her name was Mary Ann. She would come in, and there was this one time I didn't realize she was there, and she came in, and I mean, it's McDonald's. You're eating nuggies the entire day. Like you get a tray. Like we drop them, you bring them out, you let them sit there and drain or whatever. And then you get the nuggies into the little tray, and then you go to slide them into the warmer where you keep them, and you're taking one out, you know what I mean? Or you're taking the warmer out because they do. I know people probably don't believe this, but they do refresh, and we have to get rid of them at a certain point if we don't sell them. But the nuggets were going, you know, the nuggets and fries, we never really wasted them. They were flying. But there was one time where Marianne showed up, and I had like 3 nuggets in my hands. I was getting a little risky with it. I was feeling a little comfortable. I had
triple stack Oreo of nuggets, just trying to
basically had them. Saw her spin move behind the cookie oven, straight in the mouth. All 3 one time.
Got them.
Like SpongeBob style, Squidward eating the Krabby Patties, getting in it. That thing was gone straight to the thighs, just like Squidward. And I swallowed that thing, and I was like, my eyes were probably watering, dude. It was a big old bite, but I had to get rid of it. Also, I'm convinced that there's not, at least at the time, there was nothing more delicious than like a fresh baked McDonald's cookie. Like it's something you don't really think about. Like I didn't
don't
really
know if
think
I've ever even
about it.
had a cookie from McDonald's.
Dude, when they were fresh, I mean, we just put them on a flat plate, put whatever down the nonstick paper, get them all spread out there. They're sitting in there. You hear that thing go on. People were like duking it out to try to be the one that gets out there so you can scoop them up. Oh, dang. I broke this cookie. You know what I mean? Trying to scoop them off into the thing. Dang, got to get rid of it now. Dude, they're good. So if you're ever sitting in a McDonald's, like a play situation or something like that, and you're hanging out.
God, I hope not.
I know, but like there's been times where I've had to. And stuff where you're chilling inside of McDonald's. I guess that's the only thing I could really think of. Man, ask them if they got some fresh cookies coming up soon. It might be worth it. I don't actually even know what cookies they do right now, but give it a shot. Directly following that, so I hit this little area. So it's on the south side of Kokomo, right off of US 31. There's McDonald's, and then Alto Road goes between, for anyone who knows. Then there's a Starbucks. And then on the other side of that Starbucks is an Outback. So I went from that McDonald's to Outback.
Hell yeah.
And I started working at Outback because my
aunt
was a bartender and my cousin was a waiter. And so I bussed tables at Outback for about a year. And that was good time as well. So anytime I worked after that shift, I could get like half off a meal at Outback. So me and my cousin, I would work like an early shift on a Saturday. I'd text her, I'd be like, hey, you want to eat after this? And she's like, she's always down. So I'd be like, hey, I'm working tonight. We'll do this. So I bring like a change of clothes. My grandpa lived right around the corner. So I just like go over to the house, change clothes, come back, and we go and sit and we just hang out, and then we'd get, big thing of cheese fries, blooming onion and stuff. And then all of my coworkers would come over and eat with us and hang out.
Blooming onions fucking rip. Dude, they're so good. I don't know. I mean, it's literally just an onion with breading on it. It's not even cut up all the way. The root part of the onion is still there. That's how it's held together. But goddamn it, it's so good. I think it's the sauce.
Sure. I'm glad you're this passionate about it because we'll have to go get one sometime. But
I was pretty. The last time we had one, it might have been like an Awesome Blossom at Applebee's or something. But last time I had that similar fashion, it was like flaccid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was all soggy.
You got to get it. You got to ask for it a little crispy. Get in there and stuff.
Maybe
I also prefer Outback, incredible. Texas Roadhouse, sometimes mid, sometimes good. Like depending on
the vibes. The Texas Roadhouse vibes are unmatched.
Yeah,
especially if you got Walker chomping down peanuts whole.
Yeah. So we do the so I was over there. And then I'll be real honest with you, man. I was like a junior. I was between my like junior and senior year of high school at this point. I just stopped going to Outback. Like they didn't schedule me that often.
Yeah.
And then I was, like I said, I was in school, I was in sports, doing whatever. And like, I kind of just didn't show up one time when they scheduled me. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Dad. You guys may or may not have known this. And then like, they just didn't schedule me anymore. But the thing that's funny is we went to Outback all the time because like I said, my aunt, my cousins, they were waiters.
Kokomo's not that big.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And we love it. So like we still went to Outback, even though I just stopped showing up and like the managers were there, but they rotated staff so often that there were so many like new waiters and stuff that didn't even know who I was.
Right.
And I was pretty personable at the time. So like the wait staff knew me. It just was weird. Like, you know what I mean? Like working in a restaurant like that, people just never knew. Like sometimes you get pulled off the schedule or you'd ask for that. And it was so flexible that I think like no one really knew what was going on. And they just kind of hung out and did whatever. So after that time, I got very involved playing like music. And that was my senior year of high school. So I was doing a lot of music stuff, a lot of church stuff at that point. So I think my parents were kind of like, hey, like you're good. You're involved with so much stuff. Like you don't have to. I just remember I didn't work hardly at all during my senior year. Went off to college, didn't have a car, just like you said. So this is what, that was like 2008, 2009, maybe a little into 2010. And then I didn't work when I went off to college in 2011 because I didn't have a car. 2012, I went back for my second year, and the work that I did, I actually worked as a statistician for our basketball team. And so I was responsible.
What school was this?
This is Central Bible College in Springfield, Missouri.
Gotcha.
So, good basketball team, very small school, doesn't exist anymore. They merged with Evangel University, both Assemblies of God, Christian universities, but they were both in the same town. Like, it never really made sense for them to be there. It was kind of like if you had like the Klipsch Educators College at Marion, like being its own entity, and then Marion's just sitting right here, and
St.
it's like
Joseph's right down the street from Marion.
Exactly. And so it's like, hey, we're just going to combine these so you can do this. And but that happened after my second year. So it's a very small campus, do whatever. But yeah, I got a job running stats for that. And then we hosted the national tournament for whatever that division was. So I got to do stats for all those games. So my job was to listen. I basically had someone sitting next to me, and they were watching the game, and I was on the computer with a mouse clicking where on the like, I had different key binds. So like I would say, rebound. So R, and click wherever, and then, you know, assign the name, and just have to keep up with it real quick. So it was like this reverse video game feeling where like I was playing the game that was happening, but I was like,
he was telling you how to play it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was pretty cool. Like, in hindsight, it was cool. Didn't pay hardly anything, but, you know, was what it was.
Bible college, dude. They're not in the interest of giving out money. For sure.
I mean, the college couldn't exist anymore. That, you know, just a few years later. So that's where we were. Got back. So I came home from college, and then I started working online doing that. So I worked at our church for a little bit, doing the youth pastor thing, music pastor thing. And I mean, I was making nothing, but I was living at home, and it just didn't really matter. I had a car, so it was enough to get my car payment and insurance and stuff taken care of. But that's about all I was really paying for, all I could afford to pay for. And then we kind of hit a point where the church wasn't in good shape, couldn't really afford to pay me anymore. And then Heather, she was in Indy at Butler, and I wanted to be a little closer. She was having kind of a hard time with the transition, doing all that stuff, and getting just sorted with what she was doing. So I was like, hey, I'll just start looking for like ministry jobs in Indy. I was like, it's a big place. And I remember her and I, we were on a trip. We had actually gone to see my best friend Brendan and I think they were married now. His wife Taylor, because they were living together. They stayed on campus when the two schools merged together. They continued on site. So they went to the new campus. So we went and stayed with them. And then as we were coming back, Heather and I were talking a lot and stuff. And I think I was driving. She was using my phone. She was looking for ministry jobs in Indianapolis for me. Like, because we were just like, hey, this is like, let's just do it. And we found one at a place called Lawrence Church of God. So over in Lawrence, Indiana. And there was a posting.
Area. That's where that's where I did drill. I was at Fort Bend.
Yep. Yeah. So we were right over near Pendleton Pike, and it was a rough part of town. I won't shoot you any other road.
Yeah.
That's literally what it was. It was off Post Road. I remember it was a short.
Not a great spot. Yeah.
No, I lived on. They had a house. The church had a house on Mithofer. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's a street called Mithofer that's over there. Right, I think it runs parallel to Post Road, so I think it's just right over next to it. And so I lived there. That was the first time I had been out of the house. But yeah, that was an interesting thing getting that job, because somehow Heather found the job listing. If I'm remembering correctly, she found the job listing. I called the pastor. Like, I just straight up called him while we were on the road, and he picked up. Like, I called the number, like, on, because like the job listing had a number that said, hey, call this. I thought it was like the church's number, and I was going to like leave a message to say, hey, because it didn't have any info as far as like who to call, who to email my resume to. It was pretty basic. And he picked up, and I said, hey, so I just kind of scrambled and like,
Yeah,
just said, hey,
I've been there.
my name's Saxon. I play music and I do youth ministry up in Kokomo, but looking to come down towards Indianapolis. I said, saw this listing. He's like, oh, I didn't know that listing was still up. So we were looking at it. So I thought he was going to say they found someone. He said, we couldn't find anyone. So we stopped looking months ago. I said, yeah, I just found it on this website. And I said, I apologize. I thought I was going to get the voicemail, but I actually got you. I said, I'm driving back right now, but I said, I'd love to get you my resume. So I did that, went down, interviewed. They had me come in and play music on a Sunday. And
I just imagine you just bring an electric guitar, just down tune it, drop D, and just start playing breakdowns.
So no, I was on acoustic and I was singing and stuff and, leading the band, and they wanted me to get in there and do. And, at that point it was more of just like a cultural fit, right? They're just like, hey, we want to see if you're a good guy and if you can get up in front of people and you can talk and you're not awkward.
Do you love Jesus? Can you sing in front of people?
Unfortunately, for some churches, it's not in that order, right? It's not, do you love Jesus first? It's like, hey, can you sing and then do whatever? So I don't know. Somehow we had rehearsal in the morning on Sunday, and sometime between rehearsal and when we started service, my guitar got unplugged. And so I started the first song and my guitar wasn't plugged in. I had it was
plugged in to the guitar, but not the other side, right?
No, it was plugged into the other side, not my guitar. So
how do you not notice that? What are you doing?
I don't know. I think I was nervous, just do whatever. So I start playing and I looked
you in the first place.
I know, man. Well, they hadn't hired me yet. This was my this was like my interview day.
Your audition.
Yeah, my audition day, like to introduce. However, I think it was endearing to everyone because like I kind of like stopped things.
Like, oh, poor guy.
I said, I'm sorry. I said I was so excited to get started, or something like that. And I said, I should have checked my thing. I said, can we run that back? And everyone kind of clapped in the audience and stuff. And there weren't that many people, but there's probably 100, 150 people cracking up. And then the pastor came up after and he cracked a joke about it. And I think them seeing that like I wasn't going to crack under the pressure of that, like they were fine,
Yeah.
And so I think I pretty much got the job at that point because they're like, okay, then he can sing and he could play, and do whatever. So, so I was there for a little bit, probably about a year. I was there. And then I decided it was time to go back to my home church. That was a very messy situation. Honestly, a time that I'm not very proud of, making the decision to leave Lawrence when I did. Not very happy. That I did that, how I did it, but in hindsight, I grew a lot in the season right after that. Yeah. And so that actually forced me into a situation where I didn't have really any assured income. It's so funny in hindsight, man. I was just talking to Heather about it. I said, I got my tax return and it was like $2,500 because I was still in school and I was paying for some stuff or whatever. And me at that time, I thought that was a ton of money. And I was like, oh, I'm good. Like I can live for, months on that and I'll go back. And then like we had plans to try to figure out like how I was going to get paid again and stuff. And Heather was in a better place with what she was doing. So it just kind of like at the time I thought I was making the right decision. I was absolutely not. I was making a terrible decision at the time. So from that, when I didn't have any sort of income, anything of that sort, I ended up starting working at, I'm sorry, let me flip just real quick back to before I went to Indy. I worked at Starbucks. So I worked at Starbucks while I was at the church trying to make things together. So that Starbucks that was between the McDonald's. So McDonald's, Starbucks, Outback, I hit the trio. So I worked in all three of those right in that little area.
Right.
So I got flipped around because I came back and then was trying to do that. But it felt very similar, right? Like I came back to the church. I was still working at the other church when I was working at Starbucks and stuff too, but I just wasn't getting paid at the church and Starbucks. I was only getting paid from Starbucks. Came back and no pay from the church. Things kind of went sideways. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point on some pod at some point. That's going to be a real therapy session when we hit that. But I hit a crossroads, man. So it was a very interesting time where like I still had my car. I had my car payment, and I was like, I can't miss this. Like I'm not going to miss this. Right. So like, that's really where my money kind of went. Like I didn't really spend it on anything crazy like that tax money. I kind of just was paying my car payment every month. And then it's like, oh, that's not that many months of car payments. And so
yeah, right. It
my
runs
car payment was like
fast,
$300. And then I'm like, okay, well, I put gas in my car, pay for insurance and my car payment. Okay. Yeah, it's gone. So while I was at Lawrence, actually, this was a, short time I worked at Sam Ash Music selling keyboards and PA equipment. So that was my first experience kind of doing AV stuff. That was a great time. I actually had a lot of fun doing that. Just worked on the side, had some free time and, worked. So in Castleton, the Sam Ash over in Castleton. And so I would do that on the days we didn't have church stuff and kind of hang out there for a little bit and go in on Saturday. So I got like, rookie of the year or whatever they called it for like salesperson stuff, like coming in and got a lot of experience doing like DJ equipment and speakers and, pro audio and learning about all the recording softwares and stuff like that. And a lot of churches come in. And so when they found out that I was a worship pastor at the same time, it was a real natural thing. We're like, oh yeah, like you should talk with Sax and, and they bring me in and close the deal and stuff like that. So I hit a crossroads and I was like, man, what am I going to do for work? And so I just started messaging people on my phone. I'm like, hey, do you have any extra work that I could do at your house? Anything of this sort? Like, I was like, I'll come over. I'll literally do anything. I was like, just put me to work. And that's when, so Heather and I were just dating at the time. Her parents, I mean, God bless them. Like they're saints, Ray and Rachel, but Rachel was just making up stuff for me to do at the house. Just like, it was stuff that like she could do, Ray could do. They didn't need me to do that, but they were obviously motivated to see me do well because I was with Heather, but then they also were motivated. I think it was nice to know that like I was willing to do anything and everything to go after it. So like I had to scrape paint and sand down their entire back porch at one point. So then we could repaint it and reseal it and do all that. Yep. I helped Rachel paint all around like the first floor of their house. I trimmed all the branches on all these little, and that probably drove Ray crazy because he's very particular and he probably did not want me to do that because he probably wanted it to look a certain way, but they had like this big old property with all these little trees everywhere. And so I remember doing that. They had a tree go down at one point in their back. So Ray was cutting it up and I was carrying it or I was wheeling it over in the wheelbarrow and stuff like that. So like just things like that, man, just doing that. And then I, kind of like what you were saying, I was applying to hundreds of places, like so many applications out. I put out an application and I hit this fork in the road, man, where my dad had coached football at a local high school and he got to know their head of IT because her son was on his team. And so he basically had asked, like he was asking everyone because basically, I mean, obviously they were kind of cash flowing anything additional other than that I couldn't make it, couldn't bring in at the time. So it behooved my parents to get me a job as well at the time. And so I'm very thankful for all that extra work that they were doing to try to see me succeed and do. So I got that. But then I also at the exact same time started through the interview process at the post office. And there is a very, very real situation or a very real alternate reality that's not that far off from ours where I just went and worked at the post office for the rest of my life.
Swinging mail.
And I was set, man. Like I needed it at the time.
Little hat in the bag and just walking.
Dude, well, I needed it at the time. I was severely overweight. I mean, I'm still a big boy. Don't get me wrong, but like I was like extremely overweight. Yeah,
I've seen pictures. Yeah,
yeah, and it was one of those things, man, where it's like, yeah, I look like I ate a different person. And dude, it's just one of those things where like I needed. Like, I don't know, honestly, that job could have killed me, like, at the time. Like, I was not walking like we were talking about. I was not doing anything like that. But I needed a change. And so I got hired there and at the school corporation at the same time. So literally both job offers came in. And I'm like, dude, like I've been doing this for a month and a half, all these like odd jobs and just scraping by doing all this. And so these things come in. The pay was very similar between the two of them. But I remember going to interview for the school corporation IT job, and they had a really smart dude, kind of like Don Wenger. They had his name was John Bibby. Shout out to John, because he taught me so much about IT. And then I talked to him about so many other things that he just had no desire to talk about, I'm sure.
That's a good point. Don Wenger did know so much stuff that I had no idea you'd be like, man, I wish I had an adapter for this thing. And he pulled out like 6 different drawers from his desk.
Every time you said that, you gave not just you, but like anyone who said, oh, I wish I had this. And then he had it. It like solidified his unwillingness to get rid of anything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so anyways, I started working at the school corporation, and I honestly, dude, I'll be real with you. I think I was making like $18,000 like at that job. I somehow found a 1-bedroom. It was so close to a studio. If they didn't, it basically was a studio with, it had walls up around the bedroom, but it essentially shouldn't have, it really shouldn't have.
It was cardboard.
And it was $300 a month for my rent. And so I was able to get, right. So I was able to get out of my parents' house. It brought me, it could not have been a better location for where I was, because I was between 2 schools. I was between the elementary school, and then down the road, like 7 miles or something like that, was the high school.
Yeah.
And so I was in the town the elementary school was, but it brought me all the way to the side of town, like where that was. But it let me get out. It let me have my own place, take my furniture over there. I had a little TV, I didn't even have room for like a dining room, anything of that sort. So I just had like, my coffee table, do whatever. And that's where I'm eating dinner at, if I'm eating, at the place and stuff like that. But that was where I kind of started to develop into like, okay, I had to do wall sits. I'm not even kidding. I had to do wall sits to shower, because the shower head was literally hit me in the chest. It was not built
That's
for
what you get for being 6'4".
Well, that, and then this was still when I was like enormous. So doing all that, but then I was at that school about 18, 19 months, something like that. So I didn't hit 2. I remember I did not hit 2 commencements. I left like right before the second commencement. But at that time, I was the auditorium director at that school, just as like a way to make some additional money. They just needed someone to do it. And so after hours, I would go in, turn all the mics on, run the soundboard, run the lights, kind of do that deal. And I had students that would come and work under me, like help me with that. They'd come into the thing on like a volunteer basis type deal and help me run the lights and stuff. And so that was cool. Like being able to kind of lead that group and kind of get familiar and go in for all of the, the dress rehearsals of the musical or whatever they're doing, the band concerts and the choir concerts, and, do all that stuff and just make a little extra money that way. And so I left there thinking I had a job. Job fell through. The recruiter, they just didn't end up hiring me. So I left too early. Like I basically told them as soon as I had like, hey, we're good. Like, but I didn't have a job offer in hand. And so I learned a big lesson at that point. So I was on my own, had moved out of that original apartment. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And thankfully I got a call from a recruiter, and they're like, hey, we need a tier 1 help desk person. But it was at a company out of Carmel called Renewal by Anderson. So if anyone knows Anderson Windows, real bougie
stuff
windows
from them all the time.
Real bougie windows are so expensive, but people buy them and they make a ton of money. And so they needed someone on site, tier 1. They had been outsourcing a lot of stuff, but they needed someone on site to help them. All the salespeople would use iPads, things of that sort. So when I was at the school, like all of all of the school corporation had been moved over to either iPads, like K through 6 was iPads, 7 through 12 were using MacBook Airs. And so I got experience doing that. I had experience because I was using a MacBook when I was in college and stuff. So that kind of helped. But that was my first IT foray. Then I went over, did the tier 1 thing at Renewal by Anderson. I think I went from like the 18 range to like 32, something of that sort, if that makes sense. And it was a good bump, but not enough to drive down to Carmel from Kokomo every day. Like that kind of thing was a lot. But I didn't have any other options. So I was doing whatever. And so this was like 2017, like late 2016, early 2017. Heather and I were getting married. We had just got engaged. So we were getting married like middle of 2018, May of 2018. So I knew I was going to end up in Indy. She was at Butler at the time. I knew like our future was moving towards Indy. So I was like, okay, this makes sense. At least even if the money's bad and the drive sucks and do whatever, like get to Indy. And so I for a while, I ended up living with Heather's parents, saving that money for our honeymoon and for like to have some money, a little bit of money for when we got married. And then we ended up doing, I worked at, or essentially what ended up being, instead of just tier 1, I ended up being just like the sys admin there. So having to learn, and then the things that I didn't know how to do, they equipped me to outsource it and bring companies in to do stuff while I was there. So we were headquartered out of Carmel, but we were franchised. We owned the franchises for Grand Rapids, Michigan, for Cincinnati and Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
And then for, if I remember correctly, while I was there, I think they got Nashville and Knoxville. I felt like there was one more I'm missing, but maybe not. I think I started there sometime in like May, and in October, I remember I spent nearly the entire month of October in Tennessee because we were onboarding Nashville and Knoxville. So as
and those aren't
non-married
close to
guy,
each other.
Yeah, they're not. But as a non-married guy with a company credit card and a per diem, it was pretty sick. I got to just stay in a hotel, do whatever, and I got to go back and forth between those two. So I would do that pretty much Monday to Friday, and then I would drive home, stay at home, do laundry, whatever, and then go back. And realistically, I had no schedule at that point, just kind of like, hey, do whatever. And so I got into a rhythm of like, hey, I would send a message to everyone, and I was hitting all of those places. So I'd go up to Grand Rapids, and then I'd come back. And the next day I would leave, and I would go to Cincinnati and Dayton, whatever, touch both of those. And then I wouldn't go back home. I would just go down to whichever one's close. I think Knoxville is in the Eastern time zone. So hit Knoxville, be in Knoxville for a day or two, go over to Nashville, and then like call it midday on Friday and drive home, and be home before the weekend. Right. And so that was actually pretty sick, but the money didn't increase. So like I was driving all that extra and then getting the money back for the mileage.
Right.
I wasn't getting extra pay for that. And then with them taking on, I remember telling one of the guys who had been with that company, his name was Bob. He had been with the company for a long time. He had been with the owner of the company for a long time. And essentially he said, hey, he went in and said, hey, like Saxon's doing a lot more than he was hired to do. And I see the work he's doing. He's doing real good work. He said, we need to pay him more. So they pulled me in the office. Cause I kind of asked him, and I said, hey, how do I ask for a raise? I was like, how do I ask these guys for a raise? I knew how to logistically do it, but I actually had never done it. And then I didn't end up having to, because that was me asking for a raise, because I was asking the right guy. He went to them. So they came back and they bumped me from 36 to 45, which was pretty good. At the time I was like, yeah, that's nice. But then what they also did was they let me hire someone under me to help. So what it gave me was the ability to say, okay, I have now managed someone and do that. Yep. So they weren't together. It wasn't exactly at the same time. It was probably about a month removed from each other. So I actually pushed my luck, and I said, well, if I'm going to hire someone, that means I'm going to be their manager. like, can I get a pay bump? And they said, well, let him be here for 90 days. Once he's here for 90 days, then we'll do the pay bump. Like day 85 of him being there is when I left to go to Marion. So I never got that pay bump.
Yeah.
Because
that's all right.
But then you know, like I said, I got a pay bump at Marion and a new job, but doing that. So that was kind of my path there, you know. So then I was at Marion for 4 years, and then it was the weirdest thing, like being able to give like, what was it? It was like 120-day notice or something like that.
Yeah, you were way removed from.
I just knew because when we knew we were coming to Louisville for Heather's thing, it was just one of the things where, like, I don't know, it was perfect situation. Like if you're going to leave a job or do whatever, it's like, hey, I basically was graduating. It was like they knew my day was coming. And so my favorite thing professionally that I think I've ever done, and that I mean, I'm sure at some point I could eclipse it, but was fighting for my replacement, Angela, who got hired at Marion in my position, because I had worked very, very hard to like redeem and kind of get back the flow of everything on the AV side. And Angela came in and she was an absolute rock star with no IT experience. And I told Terry, and I fought for Angela to work there. And I said, hey, she's bright. I will get her to the place that she needs to be for the IT stuff. I said, she already knows the AV stuff. She was working on the event side of things. She was working at a hotel doing conference type things. I was like, she can do this. And they hired her, and she was a rock star. She was supposed to shadow me for 90 days, come to every event. That girl was taking it over by like day 30. It was her AV calendar. Like she was on it. She was just asking me like, hey, this is a weird thing, one off, whatever, working through. Every time I talk to anyone at Marion, they're always like, Angela's great. You know, we love Angela, stuff like that. And it's one of my favorite things I ever did. I'm very, very happy that worked out that way, because it kind of like smoothed everything over.
I thought it was just nice that I gave Terry 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks.
Hey, I mean, Terry was great, but she was always so funny. I remember when you left, she was just like, yeah, I always tell people like, you can leave, and I'm happy for you to leave, but you're never coming back. If I'm here, you're not coming back, which is such bullcrap. Because
if I would have asked her if I could come back, she would let me come back.
Yeah, like if you had a situation like I had when I left the school
like,
corporation, and it fell
whatever,
through. Yeah. For sure, because the people we hired to replace you were, I mean, that was terrible. So
I didn't tell her until after I had already signed my contract with LexisNexis. So like I knew better than to. I think I told her that I was interviewing. And I did feel bad because it happened almost immediately after I graduated. Like she had made comments about it, little jokes or whatever before, like, you know, you're going to graduate, go get another job or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, probably. But like graduation was May. I got this job in June. So I did feel a little bit bad, but
a little quick turnaround there. But
no,
she always was happy, you know, for people going. And I think there's a natural like level to it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, if we're going to have to, you know, if you're going to have to go off, like, let's do it in the right way, things of that sort. And so there were definitely people that should have been let go or should have left, you know, for one reason or another, and didn't, for far too long. So
transitioned into other teams that probably shouldn't have, but you know, whatever.
Yeah. That's, you know, that's something there. And that's the other thing too, when you were talking about like moving up at Marion, that was something I saw. The only path that I saw or the only thing I think that my path might've been a little different than yours was the potential for there sometime to be a role where I only did AV stuff, because my biggest pain was not the AV stuff. It was all of the help desk stuff that I had to do on the side and balancing that. And then being, you know, us being some of the most more competent people in there. So then, okay, well, now you're doing door scan stuff, and you're doing, you know, scheduling stuff. And hey, we're building new buildings.
So
and it was a nightmare.
To be fair, there's a alternate universe where I went to work on the app dev team with James. But I don't know that, now I could probably handle it. I don't know that I had the skill set to really effectively help that team, at least not starting out. Also, knowing myself and knowing how he and I get along outside of working at Marion, I wouldn't have gotten anything done. He would have had to fire me, dude. It would have been just trying to hang out the whole time and not doing any work. And he's not like that. He's get shit done and then go have a good time when your stuff's done. So I'm trying to have a good time all the time, not do any stuff.
Yep. So anyways, we moved to, I got a job here in Louisville, took it. It was just for a small, like, MSP doing IT for small businesses locally, between here and Lexington. So going back and forth, a little bit of travel, things of that sort, and then getting on this contract gig. And it's funny too, man, like the amount of offers and stuff that pop up when you're not looking, and then how dry things get when you are looking. It's insane. Just how that works. And so I wasn't looking to leave to come to Humana, to work where I am. Just, it was interesting. We had just started a vertical of doing AV sales, like for equipment and stuff at the company I was working at. And I had done my first install in a conference room. And so the only other AV install experience that I had was when you and I installed that terrible system it was the Cisco system in that classroom that one time. But when I say
that terrible, one in the business school.
Yeah, it wasn't a terrible system. It was a terrible installing experience because we
those
didn't
guys
really know what we were doing.
The dudes from what company was it? They didn't help much at all. Who was that?
Yeah, I don't remember what the company was, but
they were cool dudes, but like it was useless to us.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting is I had literally just closed the deal and finished installing my first like AV sales. I was getting into the sales process things. I had actually presented, the owner or the head of the IT part of the business. I presented and said, hey, these are the things I'm looking to do. Here's the thing I'd like to do. I enjoyed the business, enjoyed who I was working with, but unfortunately it didn't work out. And then the new offer that came in was just higher, right? So it's just interesting, the trajectory. And so my advice, if anyone's still listening at this point, because I enjoy talking about this stuff. So I want to make content that I enjoy doing. So I've had a fun time talking about this tonight, and it's kind of taken over the entire thing. But like, switch jobs. Like, don't stay still too long till you find something that's like long-term sustainable. You don't have to always chase the dollars. It doesn't always, like, sometimes the dollars don't make sense. And it's just like, it's one of those things where like, as you're going, find the place where you can coast, you can meet your goals, meet your financial goals, meet your family goals, things of that sort. And then allow yourself to kind of like progress in maybe other ways. Like, instead of expanding upward or like whatever in your career, like expand wide, like in a wide sense, and say like, hey, I'm going to try some other things on the side to see, like, bring in some extra income and kind of spice of life type situation. Like, keep things interesting.
Take that extra income and go to bit.ly/FTW merch.
Yeah, buy a little ForcedToPod coffee mug.
Stream.
Yeah. Appreciate that. I did we were talking about this off
Nobody's
the pod. I think
get
last
to that
week.
It's what we've been bullshitting about.
Yeah.
For 2 hours. Nobody's gonna get here.
If you're still here, we appreciate that. But we were talking off the pod about I did a little thing with our Discord server, the Destiny clan that we have and stuff, and I just put a little survey out like, hey, community touch base, things of that sort, because we got people all over the world. Just want to see how people are feeling, and people have reached out. And then in response to that, I recorded a video just kind of like showing them, hey, these are the results, things like that, kind of like open book type policy. And then someone responded and they're like, hey, if we watch this whole video, because I think the video is like, it's unlisted on YouTube, is like 40 minutes. Like, if I watch the whole video, do you get paid from it? I said, no, if you watch the video, you'll see explicitly, I'm losing money on this venture. I'm losing money on running this thing between the podcast things of that.
For now.
So, yeah. For now. So
just
no, we
build
appreciate
it all the
it.
Sax ran.
Let's go.
Write it off on the LLC.
the Kentucky LLC we got right now. I don't know how to navigate state bounds, but we'll.
I'm not getting paid, so it doesn't really matter.
I ain't either. I ain't
it's not like we got to fill out taxes. So. Yeah,
it's very true. So, but yeah. So, well, I hope you guys enjoy that. I know we had some other things we were going to talk about, but we've been going long. I hope you guys, if you're still listening, I'm assuming you enjoyed learning a little more about like our pathing and stuff like that. But, what we've done and the journey we've been on. And I would be super interested to find out what Walker's path was, but I don't think he's had as many changes. He's had a ton of interviews, things of that sort, but I guess at some point I'll let him speak for himself. So, So yeah, like I said, next week's episode, we're actually recording tomorrow, which will be cool. But we'll be the week after this comes out, we'll be with a special guest. And I guess I'll just say it because we're here. And if you listen to the whole thing, you get to know Zach's going to join the pod. So Zach was ForcedToPod fan number 1. And if you've listened to all the episodes, you may have heard the story of when Heather and I came to Nick's wedding. And it was probably one of the cooler experiences of my life because not only did someone recognize me that I had no idea who it was. So it was like the tiniest inkling of like a celebrity reaction where I was on the other side of it. But it also was cool to see how shocked Heather was that someone knew me from the podcast that we had literally just started. Like we only had like
a couple 3 episodes in. Yeah, 2 or 3.
She was like, what is happening right now? Essentially is what happened from it. So we're going to get Zach
into it on the next one. But a quick background is Zach is a longtime friend of mine. He grew up with my younger brother in the same class. So I've known him since, they were little tiny baby kids. And we really actually didn't hang out that much until, unfortunately, after my brother passed away. We were right around that time when we started getting together because he lives close. We play golf all the time. We'll get into it. But yeah, so known him for a long time. Super good dude. He's very pumped. I know that. I think we'll get along pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. We, somehow I think him and, it's his partner. They're not married, right?
We just say wife at this point.
That's fine. Okay. That's good to know. So him and his wife,
they're technically engaged. They've just been engaged for forever. They're in a very similar situation that Chris and I were.
Yeah. It seemed familiar, but when we walked up, I think you had given me the lowdown and said, hey, anyone with like a formal seating arrangement is going to be on the first floor. And then the other tables are upstairs, do whatever. So gone upstairs and just saw them, another young couple sitting at a table, no one else there. So we just walked up and was like, hey, do whatever. And then I introduced Heather first. I said, this is my wife, Heather. I'm Saxon. And he, like the way his head shot to, to whatever, it looked like he saw a ghost. And so, that was a very interesting, but great conversation all night. And then we added James and some other people to the table. Dave Hammond was over there. With his wife as well. So that was a good time. So, but yeah, we thank you guys for hanging out. If you're still here, we appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you soon.